There's a moment that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. You step into a crowded space, a shopping mall, a subway platform, a busy street, and something inside you shifts before you have time to think. Your shoulders tighten. Your breath becomes shallow. The noise doesn't just surround you, it presses in, as if the air itself has grown heavier. For most people, this is just background energy, life happening. But for you, it feels like hitting an invisible wall. It's not that you dislike people. It's not that you're in a bad mood. Your body reacts first, faster than logic. Every sound lands sharper than it should. Every movement feels too close. Your nervous system starts scanning, calculating, bracing, and suddenly the only clear instinct is escape. Somewhere quieter, somewhere smaller, somewhere safe. This reaction often brings a quiet question with it. Why am I like this? Why does something so ordinary feel so overwhelming? Here's what matters. This response isn't weakness and it isn't overreaction. It's information, a signal. Your body isn't misfiring, it's communicating. It's telling you that the volume of the world has crossed a threshold your system can no longer comfortably hold. Before we label it, judge it, or try to fix it, we need to understand it. Because when the world feels too loud, it's rarely about the noise itself. Let's begin. For many people, the hardest part of avoiding crowds isn't the crowd itself. It's the story they tell themselves afterward. You cancel plans and feel the familiar mix of relief and guilt. You leave early and replay the moment in your head, wondering if you looked rude, fragile, or difficult. You watch others move effortlessly through busy rooms and think, why can't I just be normal? Why does this seem so easy for everyone else? This is where shame quietly settles in, because our culture often frames discomfort in crowds as a personality flaw. If you don't enjoy packed spaces, you're labelled antisocial. If you need quiet, you're too sensitive. If you choose distance, you're told you should push through it, try harder, adapt. Over time, those messages sink in. What starts as a bodily signal becomes a judgment about who you are. But avoiding crowds isn't a moral failure. It isn't laziness, and it isn't rejection of people. It's a form of self-protection, one that happens automatically, long before conscious choice enters the picture. Your nervous system isn't asking to be fixed. It's asking to be respected. When you stop framing this response as something wrong with you, a subtle shift happens. The inner criticism softens. Curiosity replaces self-blame. And instead of fighting your reactions, you begin to listen to what they're actually trying to tell you. That's where understanding and relief really begin. Before we go any further, something important needs to be said. Not everyone who struggles in crowds is struggling for the same reason. From the outside, it can all look identical. Leaving early, standing near exits, feeling drained. But internally, the experience can be very different. For some people, it's introversion. Crowds don't feel threatening, they feel expensive. Every sound, every interaction, every moment of alertness draws from a limited reserve. It's like watching your battery percentage drop in real time. The discomfort isn't fear, it's efficiency. You already know how depleted you'll feel afterward. For others, it's social anxiety. Here, the crowd isn't just noisy, it's watchful. There's a constant sense of being evaluated. Am I standing awkwardly? Did I say something wrong? Do I look out of place? The mind turns outward, scanning for judgment, and the body tightens under that invisible spotlight. Then there's agoraphobia, which is often misunderstood. This isn't simply a fear of open spaces or crowds themselves, it's the fear of being stuck, of needing to escape and not being able to. In a dense crowd, exits feel blocked, options feel limited, and panic grows from the sense of being trapped. And finally, there is enochlophobia, the fear of crowds as a mass of bodies. Not the people individually, but the collective force, the unpredictability, the loss of control, the physical closeness that feels invasive rather than social. What matters most is this: many people don't fit neatly into just one category. You might recognize yourself in more than one of these experiences, and that's not a problem, it's information. Understanding which inner experience is driving your discomfort changes everything. Because when you stop treating all crowd avoidance as the same issue, you stop applying the wrong explanations and the wrong solutions to your own nervous system. Before we go deeper into the science, let's pause for a moment. Not to label you and not to diagnose anything, but simply to notice. Think of this as a mirror, not a test. There are no right or wrong answers here, just information. As you listen, pay attention to your body more than your thoughts. Does the idea of a packed concert or festival make you feel tired before it even begins, as if your energy has already been spent? When you enter a busy room, do your eyes automatically search for exits, corners, or quieter edges? Have you ever cancelled plans, not because you didn't care, but because you knew the space itself would be too much? Do you choose to watch movies at home rather than in theatres, not for the screen, but for the distance from strangers? And after time, in a crowded place, do you need real silence, lying down, closing your eyes, before you feel like yourself again? If a few of these landed, that doesn't mean something is wrong. It means your system has limits, and it's learned to recognize them. And if all of them felt familiar, take a breath. You're not broken, and you're not alone. Many people live this way quietly, adapting without ever naming it. This self-check isn't about pushing yourself to tolerate more. It's about understanding where you are right now. So the next steps come from awareness, not pressure. To understand why crowds affect you so deeply, we need to look beneath personality and preference, into the mechanics of the brain itself. Because what happens in those moments isn't a choice, it's a switch being flipped. At the center of this reaction is the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting threat and activating the fight or flight response. In calm environments, it stays relatively quiet, letting the rest of your brain handle thinking, decision-making, and emotional regulation. But in crowded spaces, that balance can change fast. For some nervous systems, the amygdala becomes hypersensitive to stimulation. Noise, movement, proximity, things others barely register, are flagged as potential danger. Not because they are dangerous, but because they are unpredictable. And the brain is wired to treat unpredictability as risk. Normally, sensory information passes through a filter called the thalamus. Its job is to decide what matters and what can fade into the background. But when that filter is overwhelmed or naturally more open, too much information gets through at once. Conversations overlap, lights flicker, bodies move too close, scents mix. Your brain tries to process everything simultaneously. When that happens, the system overloads. Higher functions like patience, perspective, and emotional nuance begin to shut down. Not because you're immature or reactive, but because the brain is conserving resources. It redirects energy away from thinking and towards survival. This is why irritation can appear suddenly, why you might feel an urge to cry, snap, or escape without being able to explain it clearly. Your body isn't betraying you in these moments. It's prioritizing safety over comfort, survival over social ease. The switch flips automatically, long before reasoning has a chance to intervene. Understanding this changes the narrative. What feels like overreacting is actually a nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you when the world sends more signals than it can safely absorb. For many people, sensitivity to crowds didn't appear out of nowhere. It was learned quietly over time by a nervous system that had to stay alert to feel safe. If you grew up in an environment that was unpredictable, emotionally tense, or overstimulating, your body may have adapted by becoming highly attuned to subtle changes. Tone shifts, sudden movements, the emotional temperature of a room. This kind of awareness isn't a flaw, it's a survival skill. It helped you anticipate what was coming before it happened. The problem is that the nervous system doesn't automatically update itself when circumstances change. What once kept you safe in smaller, more personal environments can become overwhelming in modern crowded spaces. Your body reacts as if it still needs to monitor everything at once. Every sound feels relevant. Every nearby person feels like information you must track. Rest becomes difficult, not because you don't want it, but because your system doesn't fully trust that it's allowed. This is why crowded places can feel exhausting, even when nothing bad is happening. Your nervous system isn't responding to the present moment alone, it's responding to patterns it learned long ago, patterns that equated alertness with safety. Understanding this brings compassion into the picture. Instead of asking, "Why can't I handle this?" the question becomes, "What did my body learn that made this necessary?" When you see crowd discomfort through this lens, it stops being a personal weakness and starts looking like evidence of resilience. Your system did what it needed to do to protect you. And now, awareness is the first step in helping it learn that not every crowded moment requires the same level of vigilance. There's another layer to all of this, one that has nothing to do with your personal history and everything to do with how human beings evolved. For most of our existence, humans lived in small groups, tight-knit communities where faces were familiar, movements were predictable, and social cues were easy to read. Your brain evolved in environments where knowing everyone around you wasn't just comforting, it was essential for survival. In those conditions, a sudden cluster of unfamiliar people would have signaled danger. Fast forward to modern life. You walk into a train station or a shopping centre and pass hundreds of strangers in minutes. To your rational mind, this is normal, safe, routine. But to the older parts of your brain, it's an anomaly. Too many unknowns, too much proximity, too little control. This is what psychologists and anthropologists often refer to as an evolutionary mismatch. The gap between the world our biology was designed for and the one we now inhabit. Our cities are structured for efficiency and density, not for nervous system comfort. Bright lights, constant noise, compressed personal space, all layered on top of social complexity our ancestors never had to process at once. So when your body tightens in a crowd, it's not failing to adapt. It's responding to conditions it was never meant to navigate continuously. This perspective matters because it replaces self-criticism with context. You're not defective for struggling in environments that overwhelm ancient neural circuits. You're experiencing the friction between modern life and a nervous system shaped for smaller, slower, more human-scale worlds. And that friction isn't a personal shortcoming, it's a shared human one. Some people just feel it more clearly than others. There's a specific kind of stress that arises in crowds that isn't about noise, fear, or even people themselves. It comes from something more subtle, the disappearance of space. Human beings rely on invisible boundaries to feel psychologically safe. We carry an unspoken sense of how close others are allowed to be, and under normal circumstances, we choose who enters that space. In crowded environments, that choice is taken away. Strangers brush past you. Bodies press closer than feels natural. Your nervous system experiences this not as neutral contact, but as intrusion. And with intrusion comes a loss of control. In a crowd, your movement is no longer fully yours. You walk at the pace of others. You stop when the mass stops. You wait, shuffle, adjust. This surrender of agency, however temporary, can be deeply unsettling, especially for people who value autonomy or have learned to rely on self-control to feel safe. What's important to understand is that this reaction isn't about disliking closeness or connection. It's about forced intimacy without consent. Your system didn't choose these bodies, these distances, these interruptions. They're imposed, and psychologically, Imposed closeness often registers as threat. For some, this taps into earlier experiences where boundaries weren't respected, where personal space, emotional or physical, was routinely crossed. Crowds can unconsciously echo that same helplessness. So when discomfort rises, it's not weakness surfacing. It's your mind and body responding to a sudden erosion of choice. In those moments, what you're really craving isn't isolation, it's agency. The ability to decide where you stand, how close you allow others, and when you get to step away. One of the most common misunderstandings about people who struggle in crowds is this idea that they don't like people, that they're distant, unfriendly, or uninterested in connection. But for many, the truth is almost the opposite. You don't avoid crowds because you lack social capacity. You avoid them because your capacity is selective. Many people who feel overwhelmed in crowded spaces are deeply attuned in one-on-one settings. They listen closely. They notice tone, pauses, emotional shifts. They connect best where there is room for presence, where the nervous system doesn't have to stay on guard. Large crowds strip away that sense of safety, not because of the people in them, but because the environment itself becomes unpredictable. Safety is the key word here. Your nervous system isn't rejecting connection, it's prioritizing conditions where connection can happen without strain. In quieter spaces, you can breathe. You can stay present, you can respond rather than react. Crowds, on the other hand, demand constant adaptation, adjusting to noise, proximity, movement, all while trying to remain socially engaged. For a sensitive system, that's too many tasks at once. This is why avoidance often feels like relief rather than loneliness. Stepping away from a packed room doesn't create emptiness, it restores coherence. Your inner world realigns, the tension fades, you return to yourself. And that matters because connection, without safety, isn't nourishing. It's draining. Choosing environments that support your nervous system isn't selfish, it's honest. It's how you protect the parts of you that allow real intimacy, empathy, and depth to exist at all. You're not less social because you choose quieter spaces. You're simply honoring the conditions under which you can be most fully yourself. So what do you do with all of this? Do you force yourself to tolerate more noise, more people, more overwhelm, hoping that one day it will finally feel easier? Not necessarily. For many people, healing doesn't come from constant exposure. It comes from acceptance, from recognizing the limits of your nervous system and working with them, instead of treating them as obstacles to overcome. You don't need to love crowded places to live a full life. You need strategies that respect how your body actually functions. That might mean choosing seats near exits, wearing noise-cancelling headphones, arriving early and leaving before spaces become overwhelming, building in recovery time after stimulation. These aren't avoidance tactics, they're forms of self-regulation. Ways of giving your nervous system the reassurance it needs to stay grounded. Living gently in a loud world is about intention. You decide where your energy goes. You decide which environments support you and which ones ask too much. And over time, that choice creates stability, not isolation. If any part of this video put words to something you felt but never fully understood, you're not alone. This channel exists for people who experience the world deeply, quietly, and often without much language for it. If you found value here, consider subscribing for more conversations about the subtle psychology behind everyday experiences. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. How do you cope when the world feels too crowded? Your experience might help someone else feel a little more understood.